This is part 3 of Federalist 62. We are going to start with paragraph 4. This is actually the part that, as I've already said, this is the part that really pained Madison. The fact that each state got the equal number of senators. So you know he's in pain when he's writing this, but he says, well, if we want to establish this republic, it's a give and take. We had to have compromise. In the previous video, I showed you the name of a few scholars that I said either read their books or look them up online and listen, watch their lectures, and you'll learn a lot from them. Here's a list of some other people. Gordon Lloyd, who is in charge of the Teaching American History website. Also, he's got some lectures that you need to listen to. And I've mentioned these professors before, so find some of the lectures and listen to. And after a year, while you're reviewing the Federalist Papers, you'll just learn more and more. And these papers, Federalism, Constitution of the United States, American civilization, will start making more sense to you. Okay, let me start reading here. The equality of representation in the Senate is another point which, being evidently the result of compromise between the opposite pretensions of the large and the small states, does not call for much discussion. If indeed it be right that among a people thoroughly incorporated into one nation, every district ought to have a proportional share in the government, and that among independent and sovereign states, bound together by a simple league, the parties, however unequal in size, ought to have an equal share in the common councils. It does not appear to be without some reason that in a compound republic, partaking both of the national and federal character, the government ought to be founded on a mixture of the principles of proportional and equal representation. But it is superfluous to try, by the standard of theory, a part of the Constitution which is allowed on all hands to be the result not of theory, but of a spirit of amity, and that mutual deference and concession which the peculiarity of our political situation rendered indispensable. In other words, we had to do it. Our situation, 13 states, different cultures, different economies, we had to come up with this system. A common government with powers equal to its objects is called for by the voice and still more loudly by the political situation of America. A government founded on principles more consonant to the wishes of the larger states is not likely to be obtained from the smaller states. So the larger states had to give in a little bit for smaller states to come into the Union. The only option then for the former lies between the proposed government and a government still more objectionable. Under this alternative, the advice of prudence must be to embrace the lesser evil. See, he likes it, he dislikes it so much that he says, okay, we had to choose between the two evils, and we decided to just go with this, with the fact that small and large states get 2 senators each. And instead of indulging a fruitless anticipation of the possible mischiefs which may ensue, to contemplate rather the advantageous consequences which may qualify the sacrifice. In this spirit, it may be remarked that the equal vote allowed to each state is at once a constitutional recognition of the portion of sovereignty remaining in the individual states and an instrument for preserving that residuary sovereignty. So far, the equality ought to be no less acceptable to the large than to the small states, since they are not less solicitous to guard, by every possible expedient, against an improper consolidation of states into one simple republic. Remember, every time he uses that word consolidation, that's a negative word. It says states are distrustful of the central government because they keep on thinking that central government wants to centralize all power, consolidate all power. So we had to come up with this system to get the smaller states to agree to join the union and not be fearful that the federal government is going to just destroy their sovereignty or not listen to them or not count them at all. Another advantage accruing from this ingredient in the Constitution of the Senate is the additional impediment it must prove against improper acts of legislation. No law or resolution cannot be passed without the concurrence, first, of a majority of the people, that's in the House of Representatives, and then of a majority of the states, that's in the Senate. It must be acknowledged that this complicated check on legislation may in some instances be injurious as well as beneficial, and that the peculiar defense which it involves in favor of the smaller states, would be more rational if any interests common to them and distinct from those of other states would otherwise be exposed to peculiar danger. So on and on, he's saying that we had to do this for the large and small states to stay in the Union. We had to give some sort of advantage to the larger states in the House of Representatives and some sort of advantage to the smaller states in the Senate. But as the larger states will always be able, by their power over the supplies, to defeat unreasonable exertions of this prerogative of the lesser states, lesser here means smaller states, and as the facility and excessive lawmaking seem to be the disease to which our governments are most liable, because he looked at what had happened in the 13 states, that the 13 states after the revolution up to 1787, in all those states, the legislature had got the upper hand and the other branches were weak. And what the legislature would do would constantly write laws, rewrite laws. So he says that's a disease, and the only way we could remedy this disease is to have a Senate powerful enough to stop the House from passing laws or even thinking about passing laws, because they know the Senate won't concur and the bill will not become a law. So he said, this is one of the diseases we try to remedy, but unfortunately, we had to accept the fact that small states have equal number of senators with the larger states in the Senate. So it had to be a compromise. So seem to be the diseases to which our governments are most liable. That's the governments of the states. It is not impossible that this part of the Constitution may be more convenient in practice than it appears to many in contemplation. So we will find out in practice, you all will come to appreciate, in fact, that it's okay to give the Senate this much power. It was very interesting for me to find out about this years ago when I was reading the Federalist Papers for the first time, and then I went and studied them a little bit more, is how much Madison disliked the idea of giving the smaller states equal votes in the Senate, but here he is defending it because he says, well, this is not an imaginary republic. It's a republic made up of people from different states, different interests, different likes, different dislikes. And if we want to become a strong country, a strong union, should be some give and take. And this way, we'll establish this republic and maybe become an example to the rest of the people of the world that they have other options than monarchy.